Welcome to our podcast, Fear Less, Do More. Here we're going to take a deep dive into the minds of some really daring, impactful change makers. I'm your host, Gill Hunter, and I'm the managing partner at Square One Law. In each episode, we're going to meet some innovators, some trailblazers, and we're going to talk about their successes, their fears, their challenges, and their lived experiences. We're going to understand their secrets to their resilience and their source of their passion, so that we can understand what drives them to achieve. These are all leaders who inspire us to step out of our own comfort zones and fear less, do more. Welcome to this episode of our podcast, Fear Less, Do More. Today I have a very special guest with me. That is Mike Bedford, who's the MD at Be Brilliant People Development. Mike.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for
inviting
me.
It's great to see you today.
Yeah, no, thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I'm loving the t-shirt. And
I got it specially for you. Had it specially made.
So, Be Brilliant People Development. What's that all about?
Yeah, okay. So the t-shirt might give some of that away, and the lanyard, obviously. For people who don't know what that is, obviously I've got my lanyard, I've got my sunflower there, I've got my sunflower here. That's all about invisible disabilities. And within that is neurodivergence, which I'm neurodivergent myself. So I'm a heady cocktail of autism, ADHD, dyslexia and dyscalculia. What I lovingly refer to as being neurospicy. So I've spent 25 years in the corporate world, in HR, in senior people roles, big government, creating cultural change, doing organisational development work, doing talent, recruitment, a real kind of eclectic mix of roles in big government. One of my main passions was about supporting people to be the best versions of themselves and to be their authentic versions of themselves and to belong. And I had an epiphany moment when last year I was honoured to be named as the UK Coaching Leader of the Year. And at that moment, I had a chat with my mentor, Joe Wright, hi Joe, who took me to one side as I was still in kind of like almost denial, even when I kind of sat in a room with all these amazing leaders, coaching leaders who I thought deserved this. I just kind of thought I'm just a guest here, right? You know, all these amazing leaders who deserve this award far more than I do. Even when Tim Roberts, who was doing the kind of the presentation on the night, called me up and kind of said I won the award. I still didn't believe it. I was like looking around thinking, who were they talking about? And I went up to get the award, and my mentor Jo could see this in me, and she pulled me to one side and said, "Look, Mike, we all believe in you. Now you've got to start believing in yourself." And I think that was my kind of epiphany moment when I realised that actually, yeah, I can do more than this. I can go out into the world and make a difference, and I can create change. And from that moment on, even though my business had been conceptualized and been created, and I was kind of doing a little bit of kind of like still in employment and running a business, I decided I was going to throw myself full on into my business. And that's where Be Brilliant People Development was really born. And Be Brilliant People Development, what that does is it's about working with really kind of fearless, brave, bold and courageous leaders in the workplace to create sustainable change in not just in the ED&I space, but across the organisation, really creating cultural change. So supporting belonging, supporting inclusion, but bringing in, attracting talent, retaining talent and developing talent and diverse thinking in organisations. And that's what I do. I work with businesses, I work with leaders to create those real sort of sense of belonging, cultures of inclusion where people can really be themselves. And I support businesses to understand the many benefits of building an inclusive, authentic and a culture where people belong.
So it's for those who don't know and perhaps who aren't reading the subtitles, it's B as in the buzzy bees.
B as in buzz.
Yeah.
B, yeah.
So where what's the idea behind the bee? What does that represent?
Yeah, so there's lots of different connotations on that. For me, it's around one of my favourite sayings, if I can remember it, is around the bee doesn't know he can't fly, but does it anyway. I really like that saying. And also, it's neurodiversity is just as on the same par as biodiversity. And it's understanding the nuances and differences of the human minds, and the coming together collectively to understand that within that there's difference as well. And for me, it's that kind of like that linking that to the bees, and that kind of that biodiversity, that pollination of ideas and difference and diversity, and how we really need to celebrate difference and make sure that we recognise that the only way to really create a workforce where people belong is by embracing difference and embracing people's uniqueness and identity. And also another favourite quote of mine is from Oasis, from Liam Gallagher, where he says, "You've got to be yourself, you can't be no one else." So there's lots of different ways and connotations I can link the B to my business, but yeah, the B stands and means a lot to me. And also for Manchester, obviously about what happened in Manchester. Manchester's a city very close to my heart as well, so there's lots of different links to the B and to why that's so important to me and to my business. But ultimately, it's about celebrating difference and diversity of thought, and recognising that and using that, leveraging that talent and diversity of thought to create that creativity, innovation and change within the workplace.
I love that. The representation of the bee. I think that's great. And like you say, it's got loads of different layers, so different people will take different things from it, which is brilliant. As you said at the start, you are neurodivergent and a nice spicy mix of lots of different things. Yeah. How much has that shaped the way you have run your business and the way that you deal with people in your business? Yeah,
it completely shapes everything around it, because I'm all about being authentic and being able to be my authentic self, but I also appreciate that not a lot of people are at that level on their journey either. So everything I do is authentic, or as near as damn possible to be authentic as what I can be in my business. And yeah, it's all around embracing that neurospiciness and really kind of helping organisations to recognise the value of embracing that and what that brings to their business and to their people as well. Because failing to realise that is not only short-sighted, but it's also setting yourself up not well for the future, given what we know about kind of we talked earlier before we came on air, didn't we, about kind of AI and the kind of the technologies that are coming in. Well, there's never been a better time to be alive if you're a different thinker right now, because the lateral way of thinking is the way of thinking that's going to be automated. It's the creators, the innovators, the entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurial way of thinking outside of the box, thinking to kind of cliche, that are going to be the skills that are required for the future. So employers need to get on this now, leaders need to get on this now. It matters now more than ever. I think that's absolutely right. I mean, people tend to approach any diversity issue with the attitude that there's a problem to solve, rather than embracing the difference and working with it. For people who don't know a huge amount about neurodiversity, can you talk a little bit about the benefits that neurodivergent people bring to a business? Yeah, it's a really important question, actually, and it's a really important point to recognise. And one of the things I do is I work with employers as that educational and awareness piece as well, because if you don't understand the context, then how can you understand how that's going to bring benefits and change, and how can you support that in the workplace? So right back to basics in its most layman's terms, one of my favourite things, like, so I'm also a speaker as well, and one of my favourite things that I like to do is put your hands up if you know what neurodiversity is, or put your hands up if you would identify as being neurodiverse. And obviously not everyone would put their hand up to that, but the trick is everybody in the audience should be putting their hands up to that, because neurodiversity encompasses all human minds. That's all of us. We're all neurodiverse. That's then within the umbrella term of neurodiversity, which is all human minds, you have neurodivergent minds, which again, not everyone's comfortable with that term. You know, the divergent sort of side of it and things like that and other things. Although it is the grammatically correct way to talk about this, is neurodivergent. I identify as being neurodivergent. And then on the opposite side, or a neurominority, or on the other side of the spectrum of that, then you have neurotypical people. So people who think, do and act in the way that society defines as normal. Okay, so being a neurominority, there's various figures thrown around about kind of the percentages of people that are neurodivergent against neurotypical. The figures range anything wildly from anything in 1 in 4 to 1 in 7. Depending on where your research is and depending on who you speak. So the 1 in 7, from my understanding, is what's known. So that would be people who have a diagnosis, for example, of a certain prescribed neurodivergence. And then the 1 in 4, which I'd probably more aligned to, if I'm being honest, I don't necessarily have the science to back that up, but is what's not known as well. And we know currently there's a massive, massive waiting list of people who are just seeking diagnoses, but not everybody wants to get a diagnosis either, because not everybody wants a label, and that might not necessarily be the right path for them either. So there's a huge proportion of people globally, this is not just a UK conversation, by the way, this is a global conversation, that sit somewhere in the middle, I would guess. So there's a middle part to this as well, that people that don't know as well, they're not really included in the stats. So that's what the stats don't tell you. I like to break stats down and understand what they do and don't tell you. That's not what that tells you. So even if you were to go with the kind of like the 1 in 7, the chances are that you would probably know someone who is on the spectrum somewhere. And as we're getting to know more about what neurodiversity is and understand the concept of neurodiversity and then neurodivergence and neurotypical, people are starting to identify more with traits and recognize that in themselves. And so some people self-diagnose because they identified the traits. They don't need to wait anything up to 5 years to be seen for a diagnosis unless they're paying privately. Some people are comfortable just being able to self-identify and self-diagnose themselves, and that is absolutely valid as well. But yeah, just to kind of go back to your question, my mind does have a tangent of wandering. Let's pull myself back a little bit, and please pull me in if you feel like I am.
Fine.
Yeah, the neurodivergent side, so that normally would, and I don't like that term normally, by the way, but would include things like ADHD, dyslexia, ASD, autism, dyscalculia, dyslexia, all of those commonly known labels, because unfortunately we're still in a position in society where we need to have labels to make ourselves feel better about things. We've not got to that enlightened point yet where we don't. And then obviously the other side of the coin is the neurotypical way of thinking, what I describe as the linear way of thinking as well. But again, what we need to be really careful about when we're having this conversation is it's not about playing one type of thinking off against the other. It's about harnessing all ways of thinking to get the best end results. And again, now more than ever, given that's what's happening in the world, in society, in the climate, everything that's happening in the world, we all need to work together. We all need to put our heads together to work out the great problems of the age that we're facing now. There's no better time to actually to harness the skills of different ways of thinking and bring that together to really solve some of the more meaty problems that we've got in the world right now.
Yeah, I mean, I totally identify with that in our business. You know, it's really important that we don't just sit in a little echo chamber and make decisions where we all agree with each other.
I like Lego, by the way.
We try and get everybody to challenge each other and to bring different voices in and speak to people outside, to try and get different views on things. I think it's so important, to get that view. You must see, you work with lots of different sorts of businesses. You must see some really good examples of where people are doing this really well. Can you tell me a bit about some of those?
Yeah, I won't name names, obviously.
No, it's fine.
There are, it's about levels of maturity is what you're talking about here, right? Yes, there's some organisations that are a more higher level of maturity than others, and there's some that have got no maturity whatsoever as well. But I come back to the point that this is a conversation that can't be ignored. We're not talking about some mythical people that you might someday come across. You're talking about people who are already working for you. If we're talking about in a workplace context, these are your people. You can't possibly say that you're committed to supporting your people, to empowering your people, committed to belonging and inclusion and people being able to be the best and best, if you're not having a conversation around neurodiversity. I say in all its widest, encompassments, is that even a word? I don't know.
We'll go with it.
I might have just made that up right now. So it's really important, I think, to go back to your point, is it depends. And yes, I work with some clients that are at a more advanced stage of the journey, but that doesn't mean that they're at some kind of, you don't get to some kind of nirvana where you're enlightened. It's not like Buddhism where you're seeking enlightenment. You're constantly learning and evolving, and you might not get this right. But one of the things I say as well, because I'm also, as we've talked about earlier, a coach. So when I'm working with clients, I'm working with them to recognise that it's always an evolved journey. You're always seeking to improve and to develop yourself further. But the more that you progress, you realise there's still more to go as well. So it's a journey, I think, is the point that I'm trying to make. And if it's with an individual or whether it's with a a large or small or medium organisation. It's understanding that this is a journey, and it's a journey that's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight, because change doesn't happen overnight.
And if you were talking to a business who has no idea about neurodiversity, what's the sort of basic starting point? Where do you get started if you don't know anything about it? What would you suggest?
So again, going back to my coaching point, that sounds like we're having a coaching conversation here. So if I flip my coach hat, we start having a coaching conversation. One of the things that comes up is, where do I start? Start is kind of my top tip with anything. If you're stuck and you procrastinate around kind of what's the next move, start, do something, educate yourself. As I said, you've already got people working for you who are going to be neurodivergent anyway. So reach out to them, reach out to your own people that are already there. Bring in people like myself, experts who understand this. Start your journey. And if you recognise that you are on a really kind of the starting tip of this journey, you need to start with the kind of the awareness raising, the understanding, the knowledge. You need to start from the basics, go back to basics, and then build from there, because you can't run before you can walk.
And you've built a real reputation for yourself in what you do. As you say, you won that coaching accolade, which is fantastic. And you also have been nominated, I think, as one of the top neurodivergent leaders in the country. I mean, that must be fantastic. What does it feel like to get that sort of recognition?
Yeah, I'm not really one for awards, if I'm being honest with you, so I don't know. It's a tricky question. It feels nice, but that's not really kind of what I'm in this for. I'm in here to create change, and to create change not just here, but globally as well. So I see myself as a change maker, and working with other people that are doing great things, because I don't not for a minute suggest that I can change education. That's not kind of what I'm doing. There's people out there that are doing great things in this space. And there's lots of different areas that require change. I knew that my focus and where it's about playing to your strengths. I knew where my strengths were and where I could create the greatest change would be in the workplace, because that's what my skill set was. And I could fuse, again, it's not just about being something either. So it's not just about me being neurodivergent so I can come into an organisation and change it, because people that tell you that are talking nonsense as well. Yeah, it's nice to hear. It's always good to have someone tell you a story. That's as far as it's going to go. If you're coming into an organisation just to tell a story, recognise that, accept that, that's great, but that's not going to create organisational change. I'm about coming into a business and working with the leaders to understand what the levels of maturity are, what they're looking to change and why, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, all of those sort of things, and then putting a plan together systemically throughout the organisation to create that change as well. Yes, I can tell my story as part of that if it's helpful, but actually I'm about the kind of, we go back to Lego, it's about Lego and building something. So I'm looking to build something with you, get the Lego out and let's build something together.
And what about your own business? What are you going to try and build there? What's your ambition for the business?
So my ambition is to grow and scale. I want to, and I mean that in the way of, I want to kind of create an impact just beyond kind of the area of kind of where I am. So like, I'm already working with clients overseas. So I'm working with clients in Germany right now at the moment. So I'm already kind of breaking into that EU sort of scene. I've got ongoing conversations with potential clients in the UAE as well. So yeah, I mean, I've talked to people in America. I mean, this conversation is a global conversation. So I guess for me, I'll go where the conversation takes me. I'm kind of not wedded to the UK on this. I think for me, it's about going where the conversation takes me and where I feel I can make the greatest impact to support leaders or an organisation to create change.
And are you finding different attitudes towards neurodiversity and diversity generally in different places?
It varies, again, and that's where you have to adapt your language. So if I'm talking about kind of what's applicable in the UK to someone in UAE or to someone in Canada, obviously it's a very different culture as well. So again, from my background is a senior learning and development leader as well. So I understand about nuance in conversations and changing and adapting your learning and your style to actually be able to deliver the greatest impact as well. So for me, when I'm working with someone overseas, wherever that might be, I need to understand, well, what's their culture? How is this conversation? What's their current level of maturity? And how is this conversation, you know, in their area, in their demographic? You know, what's happening there? What do I need to be aware of before I, you know, potentially come out and talk to your people. So it's all about learning and understanding. So for me, it's a continuous learning and development journey as well, continuous journey of growth and understanding and nuancing what I do to working with particular businesses in different areas of the world as well.
I thought that's really interesting. I mean, working with one of the somewhere like the UAE, where, for example, they have very different attitudes towards the LGBTQ community. Having to adjust what you're doing without feeling like you're compromising on the things that you really believe in. That must be quite challenging. From a personal point of view. Well,
again, you have to adapt. If you feel you're giving away too much of yourself to be able to adapt that's a decision I think only you can make. If you think what you're going to do is going to have an impact and help create more positive change, more lasting change, then again, that's a decision that you can make to help evolve that conversation. For example, in the UAE, they might not necessarily use the word disability, or they might not use the word neurodiversity. It'd be people of determination, for example, which I actually quite like, people of determination. I think that's not a word that doesn't sit uncomfortable with me, people of determination. Whereas when you think back to the UK, for example, being someone who's disabled or neurodivergent, you're very much stigmatized, particularly by the medical. And obviously then we're getting into kind of the medical models and the social models of disability. I'm more on the social model of disability. For those that don't know, the medical model is very much about kind of you're a problem to be fixed. Let's give you a label. Let's give you medication. Blah 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 blah, which runs rife in the UK. But then if like me, you believe in the social model of disability, then your philosophy is that actually it's society, it's the workplace, it's education that creates the barriers. They're your disabilities. And that makes it takes the onus away from the individual as well. It becomes a societal responsibility. You're label-led. It's a label-led approach. Rather than a person-centered approach. And my whole core philosophy is person-centered. So the medical model kind of buffs up against my own personal beliefs and philosophies.
I like that. Was it person of determination?
So
would that cover all disabilities, or is that just that's what's used for? That's I quite like that. So it sounds more positive.
It does.
It's
about language, isn't it? Which I was quite surprised to learn about, actually. From when I kind of started having conversations with people over in the UAE about kind of what's the language around this currently. We know what do we talk about when we talk about disability or neurodivergence, for example. I say, well, we don't. We talk about people of determination.
That's true. I like that. I've learned something new today, and it's a positive thing.
I'm glad to pass it on to you, because I learned it too, so it's always good to share it with someone else.
And I mean, amongst your long list of things that you've done, you also set up a networking group for people who are neurodivergent. Why do you think it's important that there's a separate network for people who are neurodivergent?
Thank you for asking me that. I do. I think it's really important. So together with another fellow neurodivergent founder, I've set up the Neurodivergent Networking Group. You can find us on LinkedIn, and hopefully we'll be able to share some of the links to that as well. And that's a free LinkedIn group where neurodivergent professionals can come together and network in a non-neurotypical way. We can share, we can be ourselves authentically, we can be open, we can talk about things and share things and have conversations that perhaps we can't have in a neurotypical type of networking setting. Because I go out to lots of networking events and conferences and all the rest of it, and make no mistake, they're all very neurotypical. I don't find they're very neurodivergent, and I don't say that in a sense of I don't think people particularly go out to look to be not inclusive. I just think people don't know how to be. So neurodivergent people know that, and they're the ones who you're going to find standing on the corners of these events, who aren't going to be kind of joining in the big huddle at a networking events where everyone's kind of like it's dog eat dog and everyone's trying to scramble over to get each other to talk to each other and swapping business cards. That's just hell for a neurodivergent person. You're going to find us on the outskirts thinking, what the hell am I doing here? So
what could events organisers do to make it more accessible for people?
Talk to us for a start. You find that no one ever asks any questions about anything. Lots of assumptions are made, and things just tend to run in the way that they've always been done. Right. So no one actually asks people, what did you think about that? Was that inclusive for you? What would you have liked to have seen differently? Hence why we decided to set up a group where we could continue those conversations. And this is the tip of the iceberg, by the way. So we've set up a LinkedIn group, but what we're planning on doing next is actually, like the neurotypical groups do, is actually establishing a subscription-based neurotypical professional community as well, where we can run events, we can host speakers, we can do conferences, all the rest of it, all the good things that are happening, or say good if you're neurotypical, out in the neurotypical world right now. We want to bring that to the neurodivergent space as well. But we can't do this for free, so we understand there's costs involved with doing all these things as well. So we're looking to, over the next few months, bring in like a subscription-based service for people to join and to be part of that and to support their own learning and growth and continuous development, but in a safe space with fellow neurodivergent people, learn from, grow with together and thrive together, rather than just survive in a neurotypical world.
Yeah. I thought it sounds absolutely brilliant. I'm sort of hesitant to ask you this because I'm not sure how much time you have outside of doing all of these things that are related to your day job.
No, please, time is a great
what you do? Obviously, we share a common passion around tattoos.
Yes.
You've got? Do all of yours have a meaning or story behind them?
So yeah, I'm an absolutely self-confessed Star Wars fanatic. So they have absolute meaning to me because I've loved Star Wars from probably as long as I can remember. And then I've got a tattoo of my family, because my family obviously means a lot to me. That's really important to me, is my family. I've got some other various tattoos that I just kind of liked from various. I'm quite a history buff as well, so I've got a tattoo of I don't know if yourself or your listeners are familiar with the famous Battle of Thermopylae, 300.
I'm not. Oh, 300.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So I've got a tattoo about that because that's lots of special interests, let's put it that way. And when you speak to people on Spectrum, they have lots of special interests.
Yeah.
Mine's Star Wars, history, some of them. Dance music is another one.
Oh, right.
As well. So in another world, I used to be a dance music DJ many years ago.
Okay.
As well. And there's a bit of a link, I think, between dance music and neurodivergence as well. You find particularly a lot of people involved with dance music, and I think it's the kind of the repetitive like beats and things like that tend to kind of either be involved with it or have some kind of passion for dance music as well. And that's just from my own conversations. Again, I'm not going to produce reams of data to back that up right now, but just from my own conversations and from meeting people. And I'm an old raver as well, and I used to go and meet lots of people, and there were lots of people there who I identified with probably on the spectrum as well. Let's put it that way.
That's interesting, isn't it? I mean, my son is neurodivergent, and his particular musical interest is national anthems.
Yeah.
Particularly from Eastern Bloc countries, which tend to be very regimented. So it's that same sort of thing. It's interesting. Definitely, something there around the beat and the rhythm
and the beat
that connects into.
Yeah.
So tattoos. Next, what's your next one?
Probably expand on some of the ones that I've got as well. So, for example, on my tattoo of Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, I'll probably look to expand on his, arguably, and sorry Star Wars fans, because I'm sure there'll be some disagreement on this, one of the coolest lightsabers in the world, a lightsaber that's actually a sword and has bits that come out of the side as well. Look to kind of get that put on to kind of add to what I've already got there as well. Hopefully before I go over to Disney, which is going to be in the next few months as well. So I want to be able to show that off when we're kind of going around all the Star Wars tours and all that kind of stuff as well.
Oh, brilliant. And if you could be any character, which one would you be?
Probably Darth Vader.
Right, why is that? It's a bit of a dark one.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, I quite like the Sith, which, the Jedi's a little bit of a goody two-shoes. I quite like that. I like the Sith. I like the fact that they're a bit different and they're a bit kind of like torn between two realities as well. And yeah, I think Vader's one I've always been interested. I do like Kylo Ren as well. But again, that's his grandson, so I can take or leave. Vader's probably my favourite. I've got a Vader tattoo as well. I like the fact that he seeks and achieves redemption as well throughout the journey of Star Wars as well. Star Wars is essentially a redemption story of Anakin Skywalker. My gosh, you shouldn't have asked these questions.
No, it's fine. It's
on
interesting.
An absolute Star Wars tangent. Sorry for those who aren't Star Wars fans. If you are, get in touch with me. We could talk all day.
I don't dare tell you that I've never ever watched Star Wars.
I won't hold that against you at all. But there's always time,
Yeah,
I'm now educating my children about it.
And history.
Yeah.
If you could go back to any time in history and just live for one day, when would that be?
Oh gosh, I'd probably like to see the Battle of Thermopylae. I don't know if I'd want to be in the middle of it.
I was going to say
it's pretty brutal. For anyone who's ever seen 300, it's pretty brutal. 300 Spartans versus 1 million Persians. Yeah, I'd like to see historical events as well. I've got my special area of interest has always been World War II as well. I'm really fascinated with World War II, particularly from a ordinary German perspective as well. So I've read some interesting stories about kind of what it was like living in kind of like Germany during like the Nazi rising regime and fall and things like that as well. So I'm interested in looking at areas of history that might not have necessarily been that well explored before.
Or from a different perspective.
Different perspectives. Yeah, so I like seeing things from a different perspective, as you might imagine.
But I think that's a really good demonstration, isn't it, of neurotypical versus neurodivergent. You know, people will talk about World War II in this country from the perspective of the British. Yeah. The way your brain works, you look at it from a different perspective, and that's really valuable to get that other perspective. Yeah. You know, you don't. It's. I think that's a really good demonstration of the value that diversity of thought can bring to a conversation or a discussion.
It really is, and if you think about that, then in the context of a workplace and trying to change things and trying to evolve and trying to get better, be that your performance, your productivity, just your workforce, your culture. Having that diversity of thought is so important as well. Otherwise, what happens? Well, you just do things how you've always done them. Nothing ever changed. We can't afford to stand still anymore, can we? Things are changing rapidly all the time. So it's important now more than ever to have that diversity of thought to avoid such groupthink. We know the dangers of having groupthink, don't we? And what happens, even if you look at it from a political context, can't afford to have that. We need to have complete diversity of thought in everything that we do.
One of your values is be brave, which resonates with our sort of value around being fearless. Yeah. What does that mean to somebody who's neurodivergent, being brave and being fearless? Yeah,
I can only tell it from my perspective. And again, I don't speak for every single neurodivergent person because everyone's got their own lived experience. But from my perspective, being brave is from kind of, I describe it as kind of like my coming out of the closet. So my accepting, and I'm still on that journey. That doesn't mean I'm out of that. I'm still on that journey. It's about accepting who you are, recognizing and playing to your strengths and working with others to work on those areas where you need support as well, and being brave enough to go out there and tell people who you actually are as well. For me, and I get that not everybody is at that point as well. It's a continuous journey, but for me, being brave is, and to add to that, to nuance around that is, particularly if you talk about this in a workplace context, the culture has to be right for that to happen as well. I'm okay now, I'm self-employed, I'm my own boss, I can go out there and be like, I'm Mike, this is who I am. But when you're in an organisation, it's not always that clear cut, and I was in one for 25 years as a leader as well, and I know doesn't always feel like you can do that, and it doesn't always feel safe, and you don't necessarily have that culture, that trust, that belonging to do that, and what can happen, and apologies to anyone if I use this term in a context that you don't agree with, but is that you could mask who you are as well. Masking is a concept that's very familiar in the neurodivergent community as well, and it means many things to different people as well. But what it means from my perspective, the masking was masking to fit in and be a chameleon and be someone who I wasn't. And that absolutely hammers you. That takes it out of you. It takes it out of you mentally, physically. I struggled with my mental health for many years when I was working in corporate world as well, but I didn't know why. It was all part of the journey towards actually starting to identify who I was and discovering who I was. That journey of self-discovery as well. So again, it's not always as clear cut as just being able to be who you are. There's lots of things that need to happen for that as well. You need to have a good tribe around you. You need to have a good support network around you, and you need to work in an organisational culture where it's safe, where there is trust, and where there's belonging, where you can be yourself. Then you can be brave.
Yeah, and I think that belonging piece is really important, isn't it? Because that moves past just being included. Everybody can be included, and you can set up structures that include people. But to feel actually that you've got that real sense of belonging to your workplace, that's the nirvana, really, from a business owner's point of view. That's what I want in my business. But it's not easy to achieve. It's not something you can do through ticking boxes and having policies. It's about the people and how we all interact together.
It's about moving beyond lip service and platitudes and pinning values on walls. It's about living and breathing them and involving the very people that you're talking about as well. Because if you're not involving the people that you're talking about, you're setting yourself up for failure, and you're not truly committed to change. You're paying lip service to change.
Finally, we've talked a bit about sort of fearlessness, and the podcast is Fear Less, Do More. Yeah. What would you like to be doing more of in the future?
Yeah, I'd probably like to do more of what I'm doing and changing, working with clients to create change and to see change happening, to see clients really kind of building cultures of belonging where people can be themselves and where people can come in with different ideas and do things differently and create change. I'd like to see more organisations mature on the level of their journeys with this as well. And I'd like to be able to help support organisations. I'd like to see education change. Whilst that's not my area of expertise per se, I would like to have, as someone who's been through the education system and been failed by the education system, I'd like to see the education system continue to change. It's got a long way to go. I'd like to see society continue to evolve and change. And for me, again, the workplace is a big, huge area where we spend a lot of our time. So I think if we can get these things right, they all interlink with each other. And I think that'll be the way that we create change. And I want to play my part in supporting that change.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you for joining me, and thank you for being such a brilliant ambassador for neurodivergent people, and for, I'm sure you will make impactful change. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to Fear Less, Do More. All of our guests come from a diverse range of backgrounds, but they all share a common drive to face their fears, take action, and create meaningful impact. If you've enjoyed this episode of our podcast, please follow us, Square One Law, on Instagram and LinkedIn, and share the content with your friends, family, and networks. Thank you, and see you again on our next episode.